Hey folks, in this video we'll look at randomizing behavior of sounds within our level. Namely, we'll be writing code that randomizes the pitch and time delay of bird sounds, and we'll end up with some code that will able to be reused for, say, other animals or other uses within this level or other stuff moving forwards. So first thing we're going to want to do is drag some bird sounds into our project. So I've just dragged these off my desktop and into my project, and these birds are just snippets of single tweets. So let me just play this. That's one. That's another one. And number 3. There we go. So what we're going to do is, in the hierarchy, right click, create empty. So we've got a new game object and we'll call it bird. And then we'll add an audio source to this. So add component, audio source. And then we'll drag one of the bird sounds into the audio source. Now I'm going to turn play on awake off, and I'll leave everything else as it is. The reason I've turned play on awake off is because we're going to play through code. So I'll minimize that, and let's start writing this script. So add component, new script, and I'm going to call this RandomScript. So now if you're following along, it might be good to also name your script RandomScript with a capital R and a capital S, just so the name of the script that you write ends up matching what I write exactly. So it's important that the name of the script matches the class name, which is right here. So it's automatically named the same as the script. If this doesn't match this name here, then it will throw an error. And you'll notice that this has a space between the words. There's no space here. This should be one word on this side. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of this commented out line here. And just to talk about commented lines just for a moment, when you've got 2 backslashes, it effectively turns that line of code off. So if I delete that line, you can see that lights up. That means that this line of code, which isn't actually code, it's just a comment, is now active. And this would throw an error because it's not a code. So if I did 2 backslashes, it turns the code off. So I'll just delete that. And in fact, we're not going to be using this start method, remembering that anything that goes between these curly braces here will only play once when we hit the play button here within Unity. That'll play on the first frame of the game. It's useful for a lot of stuff. Like perhaps it's useful for playing the music in the scene, and you just need to trigger it on once, for example. But we're not going to use this for the birds. We're going to be looking at the update method, which will run whatever code is between these 2 curly braces every frame within the game. So it'll run it again and again and again, constantly. Alrighty, so first thing, up this top area here, we're going to want to get a reference to our audio source, which is on our game object. So I'm going to go public audio source, and I'm going to name this my audio source, semicolon. So this is the name that refers to this particular instance of an audio source. If I push save, come back to Unity, we'll notice on our script that because we've made it public, we get a field here that's looking for an audio source. So I wouldn't be able to, say, drag a transform component in here because it's not an audio source. I couldn't drag, I guess, a sprite or some other component. It needs to be an audio source. And once we've connected it, So here we go, I'm connecting it now. Now, this audio source with a bird in it is now referenced using this name, myAudioSource. And this is how it looks in code. This is called camel case, where the first letter of the word is lowercase and then each word has a capital letter. So myAudioSource, there is myAudioSource here. It adds in those extra spaces. So we've now connected the audio source in Unity to the actual audio source. So in here, we could go myAudioSource. I'm going to hit tab because it's giving me a suggestion. And now I'll push full stop, which is the accessor. And here I can see that we're actually not getting any lines of code after this. And for me, this means that I think I need to reboot Visual Studio because the IntelliSense isn't working. And whilst you can code, and add the code without IntelliSense, you're more likely to make mistakes. But the code will work without IntelliSense. But of course, when it's working, it doesn't feel like you're kind of flying blind. So here we go. Usually on a reboot, this will essentially it just kind of lost its handshake with Unity just before. So let's give this a go. Fingers crossed. myAudioSource, and I'll push the dot, and there we go. The IntelliSense is connected, and we're getting all of the suggestions here. So I'll come down to myAudioSource.Play, just like that. Oh, and just some syntax. We just need the open close brackets there for that particular command. And just I'm just going to hit play. And so what we've told this to do essentially is to play the bird every single frame. And actually, I'm going to just change this to start so it actually just plays once when we start this off. I don't want it to play 500 times in a few seconds. So this is just making sure that the audio is working essentially. There we go. We've got that one tweet, which is really good. Okay. Just for fun, let's have a look what happens when we run this in the update method. Especially if we're, I don't know, running 60 frames or 100 frames a second, we should expect something pretty awful. Yep. Good. That's what you'd expect. That is running, cycling constantly. Okay, so now what we're going to do is make an if statement. So if is always followed by some brackets. And let me just start writing this in, and then I'll explain it. So if myAudioSource.isPlaying, then run everything that's in these curly brackets. Just here. Now, if we think about what's going to happen here, if the audio source is playing, it's going to run this stuff here. But it's not told to play before it gets to this if statement. So because the audio source isn't playing, it's not going to execute this code. This code isn't going to run, which means essentially nothing's going to happen. So what we want actually is we want an if statement that says if the audio source, on this occasion anyway, if the audio source isn't playing, then run this code. There's a bunch of different ways we could kind of get it to run code, but this is one way. It's like, oh, well, if there's no audio playing, from this audio source, then play it. So the way to change this to not playing as opposed to my audio source is playing is by adding in an exclamation mark, and then this makes it the opposite. So if my audio source isn't playing, then play the audio source. So if I push play now, every time the audio source isn't playing, it'll get a command to play it. There we go. So essentially it's looping. Every time it finishes its loop, it's not playing for a moment, and the code says you better play it. So that's fine for the moment. We haven't added in a random delay or any of the other stuff. So let's do two things. Let's start with the pitch, so altering the pitch. So if we come over to the audio source here, in code, we can access anything that you can see all the way down here. All this stuff is available to grab onto in code. So we could affect the volume here. We can affect the pitch. We could affect the panning. We could change it from non-spatial to spatial sound. All this stuff is accessible by code. But we want to grab the pitch. So essentially, we want the audio source dot pitch, audio source, and then we want to access, using the accessor, the dot, access the pitch. Now that audio source is called myAudioSource. So I'm going to go myAudioSource access the pitch. Just like that. And now if I wanted, we could set this to 2 and then finish the sentence with a semicolon is typical. So now when this plays, it's going to set the pitch to 2. So if we come over here, we can see that the pitch is 1. Keep an eye on the pitch. And it's turned to 2 and it's looping because of this in the update area here. Okay, good. So we've got access to the pitch. We can change it by making it equal 2, which is essentially twice the speed. But what we want to have happen is we want it to change to a random value. But we don't want it to be a random value like -1,000,000 to 1,000,000 or infinity, like whatever. We want it to be a random value between a minimum and maximum value. And this is a really handy little snippet of code here, which is random. And then we can hit dot. And when you have random dot, then you have various options. I pretty much always go for range, so Random.Range. But you could see you could ask for a random rotation. Maybe you could put a virtual speaker and have it randomly rotate to different places when you push a button, etc. So I'm just going to go Random.Range, and if you hover over the red kind of there's a bug error here. It gives a hint as to how to use this Random.Range. So it's quite small, but let me just kind of read what it's saying here. Random range bracket open, a float minimum value, comma, float maximum value, close bracket. And then there's an overload. I'm not sure what that overload is about, but it might be, it's like an extra thing you can do optionally. So what that means is we just open up the bracket, and we first write the minimum value. So let me write 1, and let me make it 1.1. And every time you use a decimal number, it's a floating point number. Numbers without a decimal are integer numbers, whole numbers, you might remember from maths. Anytime there's a decimal, you just need to put an F on the end of it, and then it'll work. So that's our minimum value, 1.2, so it's just a little bit faster than 1 times the speed of the pitch. And then we'll go, let's say 2F. And we can, you can see here, we can make integers be floating point numbers. Maybe I'll just put a 0.0 for that to even make more sense. So there we go, Random.Range. So if my audio source is not playing, then run this code, myAudioSource.pitch, choose a random range between 1.2 and 2, and then play the audio source, and then it will come back to the top. If it's playing, if it is playing, then it won't run this. It'll wait till it's not playing, and then it will cycle through. And so it'll keep going through this, and you can see that every time it goes through, it will randomly change the pitch of the tweet. So remember, you got to save the script before you head back to Unity. It typically takes a moment to kind of load and compile. And now let's push play. Beautiful. That is a very happy bird. Okay, so mission successful with the pitch. Now the next thing is the play delayed, which will put a random delay time between every bird tweet. So we want to access my audio source again. Now this time we're not actually accessing something that's visible on the audio source, but remember, you could access anything that's visible on this audio source in the same way that we accessed the pitch. So for example, you could go myAudioSource.volume if you want to randomize the volume or other things. But in this case, for the random delay time, that's something that's not on here. So I'm going to hit the accessor, and I'm going to scroll down and try and find what my options are to play after a delay. And here it is here, play delayed. So you can see that, like, I don't need to, or you don't need to remember a lot of stuff to do with code. You can just kind of see all the options that you could actually do with the audio source when you first push that that accessor, the full stop. So that's a really important part of just looking through this and just going like, oh, I could play, you know, but we're already playing here. Or you know, we could pause, mute, etc. But we're going to play delayed. And and then it's just asking for a delay time. So and you can see here it's asking for a delayed time. It's a floating float value, which just means it can be a decimal place. So let's just do this on a really basic level. Let's just go 1F, and you can see the little error there just means I need to finish the sentence off with a semicolon. So now it's going to have a delay of 1 second between each tweet, but each tweet will change to a random pitch between those two values. Save, come back and play. So we're kind of sneaking up on this incrementally. And here we can see the pitch changing. Good. Yeah, that's like a robot bird. Maybe it's like the sort of bird someone would have like a video camera connected to, and they just haven't done a particularly good job of making it seem like a real bird or something like that. Now, what do you reckon we need to do to this to make it play between a random range, say 1 second and 2 seconds, you know, and pick any float value? Yes, you're probably picked it. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to use this random range again. So I'll get rid of that number. So this is going to go inside the brackets. So random.range. And now random.range, you can see here, it wants brackets, just like that just before. There's brackets in brackets. So open bracket, and we'll go 1 is the minimum, and 2 seconds, in this case, is the maximum. And now we can see that we've got an error here, and this is where you'll have the most amount of errors, is really things that are actually really easy, and you kick yourself when you realize. So just here, have a think, like what would that error be getting thrown from? All right, if you picked it, so we've got open bracket, but we've only got one closed bracket. So this is exactly the sort of thing that will be like, damn, my code's broken. And then so much about code is just really minor stuff like that. That's where the bugs happen. And Unity won't let you play if there's a bug like that. It will just, in the console, it will say, let me show you exactly what it will say here if we've got this particular bug here. So I've got rid of the closed bracket here. Here we go. It tells you what script. So it's on RandomScript, line 20, character 59. So line 20, and then if we count it all the way along here, this would be the 59th character. It says close bracket expected, just there. It actually says that it needs a close bracket. So let's just close the bracket. And then give it a second. The bug has gone. And now we'll push play, and hopefully we've got a random delay between 1 second and 2 seconds. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Let's improve that by, I don't know, let's make the delay. And so we have to do this in here. We can't actually change the delay time. At the moment, we can't change the delay time here because we haven't added any public variables that would control, say, the minimum time before a tweet. So here, if I want to change the minimum time, I'm going to change it in code. I'm going to hit save. I'll come back here. I'll push play. Because that bird still wasn't really seeming natural. So let's see if we change it to half a second and 2 seconds, if it's a bit more natural. Yeah, that's more natural, but there's still something that could be done. I don't know, maybe it needs to be 3 seconds, etc. And now, just as a little bonus thing, it's also every single tweet is exactly the same volume. It would be good if the tweets varied in volume randomly a little bit, because, of course, that's going to be what happens as well. So have a think. How could we write a line of code that varies the volume between a random range? Alrighty, you probably guessed it. We can just copy that line of code there, paste it in, and instead of accessing the pitch, let's go and access the volume. Bingo. Now, if we come over to the audio source, let's have a quick look at the volume here. The volume goes from 1 to 0. And you can see it's a floating point number, it's decimals, and it can only go to 1. You can't take it up to a maximum of twice the volume. So let's make it 1. You don't need to put the decimal in. And let's make the lowest value 0.2. So it's really, really pronounced. We're definitely going to hear the volume changes. And I might make, well, yeah, let's leave it on 3 seconds. It's probably going to be a little unnecessarily time consuming listening to this to wait when it has those pauses, but cool. And now, of course, it's not spatialized either, so it doesn't matter how far away we get from our map. It's not going to spatialize, and we're not going to hear it in our right ear or our left ear because we haven't set it to the bird to be a 3D sound yet. But we can see over here that the volume's now randomizing every tweet, and the pitch is as well. And we've got a random time delay. So that is really good. That bird still doesn't sound supernatural. Supernatural. But it's getting there. So so this is actually a bit of a pain in the butt at the moment, having to come in here and change the pitch value in code, like, I might go like 0.8, 2 is just too high, so maybe 1.3, so it doesn't seem so, weird. And so this constant coming back into code to change the values and back to Unity, it's kind of, you can do it this way, that's totally fine. But if you want to make life easy for you, or if, say, you've got a programmer, they'll often make life easier for you as the audio person by exposing these values as public variables in our script in Unity, so we can tweak them from in Unity. So let's do this. So what we want is a public variable for minimum pitch, minimum volume, maximum volume, minimum delay, maximum delay. So that's 6 of these. And this is great training. If you're going through this and typing through this at the same time, this repetition of typing out these public variables is great for locking this in. So public, and these are all going to be float. So these are all going to be decimal point numbers. So this is the type of thing that we're dealing with. And this first one is going to be minimum pitch, semicolon to finish that line, public, float, max pitch, and then I might just duplicate those and make it minVol and maxVol, and then one more time for the delay, so minimum delay and max delay. Alrighty, so if I push save, now these aren't connected here yet, but to make sense of this, minPitch is now the reference to a floating point number. We can't see what the number is here at the moment. We could set it as a default. We could go, I don't know, 3.2f, and then by default it will be minPitch will mean 3.2 wherever we put minPitch. So if we just have a look at these now, we've made all these, and bam, they're all in our inspector now, public, and we can change them by dragging or coming in and typing, etc. So we've got all these exposed variables. So now we just need to plug these in to these values here. So this is the minimum pitch. So let's grab that minPitch, and we can just replace it. So that's a floating point number. This is a reference to a floating point number. At the moment, it is 5.5. All right, let's grab the maximum pitch. Bam, and then do the same for the other floating point number references. MinDelay and maxDelay. Bam. There we go. Save. And now we don't have to go into code to change these values here. So let's go minPitch. minPitch. Let's try and get some values that are actually going to be decent. So 0.85 and the max pitch. Let's go 1.2. So it's not a huge variation, but it'll sound a bit more natural. Min volume, let's go 0.6 and 1. And then min delay, let's go 0.5 and 3 was actually working pretty decent before. Alrighty, if we push play, yeah, a couple high pitch ones, lower, high. Yeah, that's all right. You know what? The low ones are maybe just a smidge too low. So maybe we'll just go minimum pitch. Let's go like 0.95. So it's just a smidge, 95% of the minimum pitch. And yeah, let's go 1.2. Still there. So that was easier changing that than going into code, which is good. And you can change these whilst everything's running as well in code. Whilst the scene's running. Okay, so time to now put the bird in a tree, and we might duplicate this out as well. So let's have a look. So the bird is there. That's not a bad spot, but what I'll do is I'll just 0 its position, being that that's a good way just to kind of get it into a decent area, and I'll give it its height. Maybe first, and from here what I'll do is hit this green little kind of cone gizmo thing, so I'm directly above, and I'll hold Option Command to get the hand tool up, and then left click to drag. So Option and Command, and the scroll wheel out a little bit, and then this way. This is a really nice way to then be able to position birds in trees. Alrighty, so that's one bird done. Now I'm going to duplicate that bird, and I'm going to chuck the other bird over that side. Let's duplicate both of those, and maybe we'll move those two, kind of put that one in that tree, and then this one in that tree. And let's duplicate 4, so we end up with 8 birds in total. Alrighty, maybe I'll get that there. Put that one over there. And there's a tree. There's going to be a bird in every single tree. Like no tree without a bird. Good. Alrighty. And now by holding Option and left click dragging, then we get the that nice rotate again. So there we go. We've got those birds there. let's go for a little bit of a stroll through the woods. Now we can sort of decide how we want to tweak things. Ah. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, we haven't spatialized these audio sources, and this is great because actually we can look at how to do this all in one go on multiple objects. And the second thing is maybe that max delay is a little bit too short, given that we've now got quite a few birds. They probably actually have a bigger pause. So first of all, let's just choose one bird there, expand out the audio source, and I'll just mute the demo scene so we can see here, this is the inner sphere. And you can see as I'm moving this kind of on the right-hand side of the screen, see the min distance just there is changing. Remembering the max distance by default is 500 friggin' meters away, which is just too big. It really, like with Unity, it should default to, I guess, 20 meters. And I would say it should default to linear roll-off as well. It's just more usable. So anyway, first of all, min distance, I'm going to change this to 2 meters, let's say, and the max distance, I'll change this to 15 meters. And so now if we roll out, it's it just makes more sense, that range. I'll change the volume roll-off to linear, and then it'll just be a natural progression, what we would expect to hear with a volume curve in the game engine. So now that was just for one bird, and now if I go to the second bird, you can see I've got that same thing needs to happen again. So there's two ways I could do this. I could choose the settings that I liked, and then I could come up to the, this is the bird, with the good distance here, and come up to the 3 little dots on the audio source, and I could go copy component, and then I could bulk select all the other birds, but let me just, on one bird, I'm now going to see its max distance is 500. I'm going to paste the component values, and then it's pasted the values from bird 1 to bird 2, and that's done. Now the other way that you could bulk change stuff is you can just select multiple objects of the same type, and now we can change the linear roll-off, change max distance to what was it? Well, let's go 2.5, so it's a bit different, and let's make these like 17 meters here. So there we go. We have a little bit of variation even in the how far the sound is going to travel, etc. And so if we select all of our birds now, we can see that they're how they're radiating outwards, and we can turn on the demo scene with that eye and get a bit of a sense that at least down here, these are just reaching past the bridge. You can sort of see that. And of course, those spheres are actually visible on the map as well, but they're just a pain to look at. So of course, this is a good way to kind of see. So we've got a little bit of coverage, but it's not all the way. Like if we went all the way over here, then we wouldn't hear any of those birds. So maybe we'd put one lone bird over in that area there, or for example. So that's good. They're all spatialized now, and of course the spatialize thing. Oh, actually, you know what? They're not spatialized. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to go spatial blend. I'm going to drag them all over to 3D for spatial sound. So now that means that when you move away from the audio sources, they'll attenuate in volume. they'll get quieter. If you pass an audio source on the audio sources on your left side, then you'll hear it in your left ear. That's the two things that the spatializing does. And the other thing is we actually end up with some Doppler as well. So we can see here, if we walked around or moved past these fast, we would actually get a bit of a like a or you know, a Doppler effect. All right, so let's push play and test this out. Okay, not hearing anything. Ah, there's a bird. Let me go over here. Oh, I haven't changed the max delay, so it's going to be quite... Yeah, like this is... Oh, I can definitely hear the sound being spatialized. So this is what I would maybe be expecting in the evening when they're all heading back, but not in this kind of I guess late Arvo kind of vibe here. So just going to get those birds, and I'll come to the max delay, and let me just change that to 8. So they're all now somewhere between, let's say no bird tweets more often than 1 second, and take up to 8 seconds. And this should sound pretty pleasant now. Oh, little tip: when you're in play mode like this, at least on a Mac trackpad, you can do an outwards pinch on the trackpad, and there we go. Then we end up with full screen. And if you do like an out to in pinch on the trackpad, just 2 fingers, then yeah, you can kind of flip between full screen and... So let's do this in full screen. Oh, I'm dropping a lot of frames, I think, because OBS is running at the same time. So it's not super smooth. Not bad. Let's head over here and just double check that we're outside the radius like we're thinking. Yep. Okay, hit escape to free the cursor, and so the birds are sounding nice to me. And actually, so what I might do is I'll enable, I've got in this audio object, which I'm using as a folder, I've got the frogs and I've got the music here. So maybe I'll just play this in context with those elements. See kind of how that adds to things. Okay, so the birds are too quiet for the music. So I'm going to come down to the audio mixer tab just here. If you don't see the audio mixer tab, hit these 3 buttons here, add tab. And actually, no, you can't choose it from there. So you'll need to come up to window and audio mixer. And that will enable this. Let me just close that and just show you. Window, audio mixer. This will bring that window up. Let's hit new audio mixer. Now I've already created 2 extra groups here, and one's for frog, one's for music. So I'm going to click master, add another group, and I'm going to call this birds. And now we want to send the birds to this group or this track. So I'll just click all of those and click the output here on the little circle, click birds, and now these are output into the birds fader here. And I'm just going to turn this down a bit. And now this isn't in a decibel. Oh, you know what? Maybe it is a decibel scale, but it's certainly not not logarithmic when you're moving this fader. It's really weird. It's almost like a linear kind of vibe. So this is not 10 dB decrease. There is a way to a script that will convert this to dB, but yeah. Anyway, so let's pull these birds down. I don't know, maybe 10 whatever units they've got going here, and push play. So the frogs are a bit loud, so I'm going to come click edit in play mode, pull that down, maybe pull the music up a bit. There we go. Wow, this is dropping so many frames because of this OBS in the background. Usually, moving around, this is pretty nice and smooth. Now, a way to continue making this better and better is to not use the same bird for every single bird tweet. So let me come back to the project, the audio folder, and there was 2 other birds here. So I'm just going to chuck bird 2 in 2 of these. So here we go, I'm just switching those out, and then I'll add bird 3 in 2 of these as well. So now there's 4 with bird 1, and 2 with bird 2, and 2 with bird 3. So there's just like more variety in here. Let's hit play and see what this has done. Yes, that's sounding really nice. Good. If anything, maybe the tweets are still happening, too often, but that little bit of extra variety really does do a lot to kind of sell, sell all of those sounds. Now, what you could do as well, you could like duplicate one of these birds, and you could make this one, like, let's call it like rare bird. Yeah, and you could have like a rare bird in here, which could be, I don't know, maybe you find like a falcon or something like that. And so on this one bird, you could do something like a minimum delay of 60 seconds and a maximum delay of, what's 10 minutes is 600 seconds. So we could go 1,800 seconds. I think that's 30 minutes. So somewhere within 1 minute to 30 minutes, a falcon could play. And actually, you could also have that on an invisible moving object with the Doppler effect. And when you're just walking around here, it kind of generates this thing where it's just like every now and again, there's this rare thing that just happens, and if you're really lucky, you hear the Doppler as it kind of moves around. And a great connection between audio and the game engines is the sine wave. And so we could have an object that is moving from one area to another area, or it could be moving up and down. And the way that we would do that is essentially assign a low frequency oscillator, a low frequency sine wave, to move, say, an invisible sound around. So using sine waves not for generating audio, but for moving objects. And I think that's really cool as audio people, just sort of seeing stuff like those waveforms being used, familiar things being used in unfamiliar ways, which is really cool. And of course, we could use, we could attach a sine wave to vary various things on here, like the pitch, etc. Alrighty, so there you have it. Now, if you've managed to get this far with adding birds around and everything sounding cool, then remember that script, which you should find that the one that you've made in the root directory, in assets, and here it is, RandomScript. So this is the one that we've written here. So from here, a challenge is find some other animals that can be placed around the map and use that script again. And you might use it for things that aren't animals as well. Maybe you could use it for I don't know, potentially some leaf rustling sounds or wind sounds or interesting little musical motives that might play in areas. We haven't talked about trigger boxes yet, but maybe when you enter the swamp area, you go through an invisible trigger box and then an interesting sound will play, and it will be able to use perhaps this random script that triggers a certain sound when you're in the in this area here. So we can expand on this quite nicely. So just as a very quick example, create new, let's create a woof, and on here we would need to make that audio source. Bam. We would put a woof sound in here, appropriately set the audio source, but then we would drag our random script in. Bingo. And now we've got this stuff for our woof. Maybe we liked the settings for the rare bird, so we could, instead of typing those out again, we could come here and go copy component, back to the woof, paste component values, bam. Now I've got a rare woof, and yeah. Okay, let's leave it there. Good luck, and see you in the next video. Bye.